Hi guys, welcome to another episode of our full stack mobile development series. In today's episode, we are going to focus on the password reset endpoint. We are going to create two endpoints, one for sending the verification code via email and the other endpoint for receiving the verification code alongside the new password for the user. To begin, we would open our project in Visual Studio Code. We'll open our api.php file, and we're going to create two new routes. We are going to create the route outside the auth middleware because at this point the user has not logged in or registered to have an access token, right? We have two endpoints here. We're going to say reset OTP. Just going to call the reset OTP method. And then we're going to say reset.otp. And then we duplicate this. Now this endpoint is going to send a password reset verification code to the user via email. And this one is going to take that verification code from the user alongside the password to reset the account password. Okay, great. We'll then head over to the auth controller and create the two new methods from the route. All right, so I'll go ahead and just duplicate this OTP and then call it password reset OTP, just as we called it in the api.php file. Good. At this point, we do not have the user, so instead we want to validate the request. So we want to validate the request because the user is going to provide us with the email. So we have the email, which is a string. It's an email. It's required, sorry. And it's an email of maximum 255 characters. Now here, what we want to do is when the user provides us with an email, we want to make sure that the account exists in our database. If it does not exist, we tell the user that the email is an invalid email, right? So we're going to say exist users email, right? Once we have this, then we want to get the user. And to do this, we are going to say user is equal to this auth service get user by email. Okay. At this point, we're going to pass the request email as a string here. We're going to head over to our auth service class and create that new method, which will return the user by email. So public function get user by email will take a string of the email and return a user. Okay, so here we're just going to say that the user is equal to user where the email is equal to the email, and we return first. Now at this point you can have a null user because we are passing in the string of the email, and if the email does not exist in our database, we do not have the user, and we would want to either return null to the controller or throw an error saying that the email does not exist, right? But because we are doing the validation on the controller side, for now we'll just return whatever we have because the controller in the validation here would make sure that the email exists in the users table, right? So I can just remove this and go ahead and return this in one line. Good. At this point, you have the user, and we are going to pass the user to the OTP. We want to make one more modification to the OTP method in the auth class. By default, you are treating all OTPs as verification OTPs. We do not want to do that. We want users to use verification OTPs for verification purposes and password reset OTPs for password reset purposes. So I'm going to first copy this, cut it, and say that is equal to type. And here I'm going to create a string type, which has a default value of verification. So that means if I call the OTP with just the user, it's treated as a verification. If not, we pass in what we want to do. Now at this point, I'll want to pass in my new type, which is reset. So I could say password reset, right? So that means that that verification code should be used for password reset only. Once that is done, we send the message that the OTP has been sent successfully. Now let's go ahead and test this new endpoint. Let's open Postman, and we can duplicate this endpoint here and say that reset OTP. All right, let's move it down here and we append reset/OTP. Now this does not use any Bearer token, so we are going to take this one off, and then we are going to submit this. Yeah, so I need to provide the email, and it has to be a valid email. So let's provide an invalid email. So let's say 11 dash. Now I realize it tells you the selected email is invalid. As you can see here, it means that the email is not a valid user. Now let me use a valid user, and it tells us the verification code has been sent. So let's go to our email address and verify that. Good. So now this is the new email that has been sent to us. Okay. All right. Now, before we continue, I want us to make a quick change to this email. I found a very nice template online that I want us to use. It's just a very nice test. So I'm going to make the adjustment here. Okay. So the email looks like this. You have the first line, your 6-digit code, and then hi there. So here I want to write the user's name, provide the code, and make a description here. We want to change this and say in the app, do not share this code, Penger is here. Now this is the template. So let's go ahead and implement this in our mail markdown. I'm going to go to resources, views, mail, and I'm going to open the OTP. All right. So now because this is a markdown file here, you have the option to use the markup language. And for that, I'm going to copy this. We are going to use an online editor to write our markdown just to see how it will look when the email is being sent to the user. So here I'm going to have my first line. I'm just going to say that hi there, your 6-digit code. So at this point, I want to say the user's name. Okay, and then I have my code here. Okay, if you have any question, I think we do not want to have this here. Yeah, so the code is just valid for, and then here we want to, right? Okay, I think no, at this point I'll just use a strong for this. Okay, now this is HTML, so it will be rendered. Great. And just need to add one more asterisk, and then this becomes bold. You can put another asterisk here. This also become bold. So you can do this with HTML, or you can rely on the markdown to do most of these things. Yeah, and just stick with HTML. Yeah, great. So now this is how our new email is going to be looking like. Great. Let's head over to our email file here and replace this test with this line. Great. We can remember, because we have pretty enabled, it would automatically be formatting it. So I'll go ahead and disable prettier for this one and save it here, and then you can enable pretty again. Good. Now let's test this new change that we've done. I'll go ahead here and send a new verification email, and then I'll head over to my inbox. Great, I have a new email. So now you can see this is the new email. We have the bold test, your 6-digit. Hi Bernard, your 6-digit. Let's send this to the next line. Okay, so we come here, remember prettier, it's on, so I would want to disable it. Okay, so hi Bernard, great, your 6-digit code is blah blah blah, and then we have this and that. Okay, so now let's test this again. Great, now let's wait for the new email. So we have the new email. Nice. So as you can see, it's gone to the next line. Maybe we want to remove this because it's sort of duplicate, or we can move this into the subject. Okay, so let's make that change. Here we move this 6-digit verification code into the subject. No, we don't want to save that. Save this. Okay, great. Then we go to our mail file. This is our mail subject. Penger verification code to your 6-digit code. So your 6-digit Penger verification code. Okay, now this is nice. And now just enable this, close it again. Good. We can test our email again. Okay, so now we have the email with the new subject, your 6-digit Penger verification code, and then we have it. All right. So that is the endpoint to send the verification code that the user is going to use to reset the account. Great. Let's move on to set up the endpoint to receive the verification code and reset the password for the user. To do that, we would head over to the auth controller here. And now we can just go ahead and duplicate this. Here we're going to say reset password. At this point, we will need the OTP, which is required, and it's numeric. Right. Good. We're also going to need the user to tell us the password, and we already have defined the validation for a password up here. So we just go ahead and duplicate this here. Now the user has to provide us with the password and the password confirmation as shown here. Right. To do that, we just say password confirmation. Okay, now out of the box with Laravel, when you say confirmed, right, it would all try and make sure that the password is equal to the password confirmation out of the box. You can also say same here instead of doing this. Can also say same as the password, and that means that this field has to be equal to what the password is. But we'll just go ahead and use the confirmed validation route. Very great. So here we want the user to pass the OTP, the password, and the password confirmation rule. We get the user by email, and then we reset the password. Okay, so we are going to first take the user and pass the entire, okay, and then we say reset password. Okay, that means we have to go to the auth service and create that function to reset the password. So we take the user, which is the user, and the object request. Great. Now at this point, we first need to validate the OTP, make sure that the OTP is valid, and then we set the new password, and then we return the user. Right. Now to validate the OTP, we have it from the verify function here. So here we look for this, where we take the code from the user, and then this. Now here we want to make sure that the type is equal to the type that we set here when we're sending the password reset to OTP, this type, right? That means if the person is trying to use an account verification OTP to reset the password, it will not work. Okay. And then we have that set here. Now, if we do not get the OTP, as usual, we abort and we say that the OTP is wrong. So here we validated the OTP. Now, if the OTP is correct, we go ahead and update the user. So I'll go ahead and take this, change this to updated that just to know when the change was done. And then say that the user password is now equal to the request password. That's the new password the user is setting. And once the whole thing is done, go ahead, invalidate our OTP, and then return the user. So at this point, we've updated the user with the new details and we return the user, right? So let's go over the function again. We first get the OTP, make sure it's of that correct type. We validate the OTP, we set the new password, and we said that the OTP is no longer active. Now let's do the same thing as we did here for the account verify. We want to make sure that the OTP being used to verify the account is the verification OTP. Okay, we can allow them to use all of them, but here we want to have that check to make sure that you are not verifying your account with an OTP that is being used to reset your password. That means when we come to the email that we sent to the user, we can maybe change this test a bit, right? We can maybe change this test a bit and say that use this code to reset your password, right? Instead of saying to complete the verification process. So let's go to our email class, our email markdown file here. Now we need to know what kind of OTP code, we need to know what kind of OTP code this is. So we need to know the type of OTP, and we'll start by updating the OTP mail here. So here, instead of getting just the code, we want to also know the type of code the OTP is, or we can go ahead and take the actual OTP here, although here, change this to OTP, change this also to OTP, right? So at this point, we have the actual OTP. And then in our mail markdown file, we can see that the OTP has this code, right? And then we want to make the change here. At this point, we can still use late. So we can say that if the OTP is of type verification. So here, let's check the password reset first. So type password reset, then we do this. Else, we do that. All right, so here, use this code to reset your password in the app. Okay, so use this code to reset your password and use this code to complete the verification process. So these are the two. So if it's not a password reset, then it will default to this. Okay, now, like I said, if you save, it's because of prettier. I like having prettier on, so I'll manually want to be disabling it. All right, so we save this, and then I would want to enable prettier again. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this again. Okay, I'll head over to Postman and first request, and then we have this error, and that's because we've changed what we are passing, but then we did not change it in the service. So over here, when we are sending the email, we do not want to send the code, we rather want to send the actual OTP, and then we send it. Also, you need to make the change here in the type of the data in the constructor. Let's go ahead and send it. Good. Now it sends the verification code. If I go to my email and I view my verification code, now it's saying that use this code to reset. And as you can see, the formatting is off, and we can fix that. So to do that, we go to our blade file here. We go ahead and just put this in a paragraph. Right. Now remember, I said that with markdowns, everything has to be on the left side, right? Like this. So now we go ahead and test it again. Show the new one. Now you can see it is fixed, right? So use this code to reset your password in the app. Now let's use the same thing and then go here, go to OTP. This one is to verify the account. So go ahead and send this. Okay. Now this one should tell us a different message. Now it's saying that use this code to complete the verification process. So now you can see in the message, we send them different message test based on what kind of code that is. All right. So once that is done, I can go ahead and close this, enable my pretty again. And then we are sure that when they are verifying, they have the correct code for verification. And when they are resetting, they have the correct code for resetting the password. Okay, now let's go ahead and test this in our Postman, right? So here, before we test this, let's make sure that we have done that. So here we reset it, and then we get a new user, and then we can see that the password reset was successful. So let's go to our here and then change this password reset. So password password reset successful. Okay, so we send this message to the user. Okay, at this point we don't want to return the user, we just want to tell them that password reset was successful, and they can go ahead and then sign in with the new password. So it's either based on this you sign in the user, or you let them sign in with a new password, right? So we just let them sign in with a new password. So here, just saying that yeah. Okay, These comments are just to show you the steps that we took in every approach. These are just easy comments we can go ahead and remove easily. Okay, now let's go ahead and test this in Postman. We'll go ahead and duplicate this, rename this and say reset password with OTP. So that means that the person is resetting the password with OTP. So here I change this to password. Now let's get the OTP from the email. This one was a verification. This one is to reset the password. Okay, so we are going to test both cases. And then I go to the body here. See this, I go to the body here. Now I put the OTP. I put the password in the password confirmation. Now in our code, we said that we want to get the email from the request, but we are not taking the email currently. So we need to also do the same thing here. Go ahead and we take the email just as we did previously and take the OTP. So I'm going to come here and take the email, right? So here my email is texafo@gmail.com, and the password now, I just want it to be the same as my previous password. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and do this, and then the OTP I say 123456. Now what happens if I do not pass the password confirmation? Right, it tells you that the password field confirmation does not match. So it's telling that password confirmation field, as you can see, is required. Now if I pass this and I send two different passwords, it tells you the password field confirmation does not match. So it's telling that the password does not match each other. Now if I send the correct password but with the wrong code, let's see what happens. It tells us invalid verification code. Good. Now let's pass the verification code, this OTP for verification, which is not for password reset, and see what happens. So if I pass this valid code, which is for verification but not for password reset, it tells us the same error. Okay. However, if I use this correct code and then I pass it, good. Password reset successful. So we've completed the authentication APIs. We've done the reset, the login, the send OTP, the verify account with OTP, send the reset OTP, and reset password with OTP. Nice. So let's go over the entire code again, and just to make sure that everything is in order, we've not left anything behind. Great. So we have this here. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and close up. Let's make this one last change before we proceed. In the auth service, right, what we are doing is anytime the user requests for an OTP, we just create the record and we send it. However, what we want to implement is that we want to make sure that we check for spam. For example, if I make a request for an OTP multiple times within a minute, or multiple times within 30 minutes, or within 15 minutes, right, the system should be able to check and make sure that I'm not spamming an email address, because when the person is resetting the password, you just put in the email and we send it. To make sure that the person is not spamming the email address, what we want to do is we want to make sure that this user has not requested an OTP a certain number of times within a time frame. And to do that, we are going to implement some form of throttling, right? And then I'm going to make the change here. So before we generate the code, we want to check for spam, right? And throttle. Good. So here, let me say the number of tries. For now, let's say 3 times. And then we want to get the time. So the time is equal to, we are now using carbon now, and we are going to subtract minutes, right? So we want to subtract minutes, and then I'm going to say 30 minutes. So we are going to go 30 minutes back in time and make sure that the user has not generated more than 3 OTP codes in 30 minutes. So here we want to say that count is equal to OTP, where, and then at the point here, I could just copy this here. I could just type it myself. So where the user ID is equal to this user's ID, and the type is equal to this type we are generating, and the active is 1. Okay, so we want to get the count of them. Now we also want to make sure that where the created at, right? Okay, let me do this here, where the created at is greater than or equal to the time that we have now. So the time. Okay, so here, if the count is more than the number of tries, then we abort the entire operation. So if the count is more than or equal to the number of tries, so if you've reached the limit, we abort 422, and we say that consider too many OTP requests. We are going to move this into the language files, but we just want to be sure that we are doing the right thing. Great. So let's go ahead and test it. So that is 1. That is 2. That is 3. Now let's go for the 4th one. Good. Now you see we get the results. Too many OTP requests. Now, if I want to get a new OTP, I would have to wait for that 30 minutes. Okay. So that means the OTP lasts for 10 minutes as we indicated in the email. Now, this is a very good way to make sure that users do not spam your email. You can also implement some control measures on the front end where you disable the button for a specific time and then let them tap on it again to resend. But assuming that they are able to sniff the network and get to know what endpoints you are calling, and they call it directly instead of using the app, you can also make that check on the backend. So as you can see, anytime I hit it again, it will give me that same error. That's it. Now we've had 25 changes. We are going to commit all of this to our GitHub repository. I'm going to go ahead and create a repository for this project, for the Laravel project, and we are going to push the changes we've made so far. I'm going to drop a link to the Git repository in the description below, so you can go ahead and look at the entire code base as we've progressed so far. And in the next episode, we are going to integrate this into our Flutter application. We are going to first register the user login, get the verification, and then reset the password. So we are done with the APIs. We have to move ahead and integrate these APIs into the application. So that's how we are going to do. After every module, we are going to integrate the APIs that we've written. Okay, let's head over to github.com. I have GitHub open here. Then I log into my account. I go to new repository, and then I'm going to create the repository for our project. So it's going to be Penger API using Laravel. Okay, so it's a public project, and I'm going to go ahead and create it. Good. So yeah, you have your git commands to make the changes. So I'm going to go ahead and in the integrated terminal here, I'm going to git add everything, git create a commit. All right, before that, let's create an issue, which is going to be used to, we can just go ahead and, for the first commit, let's go ahead and create the first commit. And then in the subsequent commit, we are going to create issues to create the feature branches. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste the add remote, and then the main branch is main, and I'm going to push to main, right? Great. So now we have pushed our code to GitHub, and we have our first commit. So we set up a fresh Laravel project. Great. So that's this for this episode. In the next episode, we are going to integrate these APIs. We are going to make changes to this README file and start to document our application better in the README file. So stay tuned. If you've not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and also click on the notification bell to be notified on the next episode. See you.